Okay, making my ATC cards. Step 1. Actually, this is step 2. Step 1 is cut the watercolor paper in 2.5 to 3.5 inches. 2.5 by 3.5 inches for the ATC cards. Wet them. Come in with my yellow pigment and paint down about halfway on all of them. I'm making a rainbow card. Step 2, tiny bit of pink pigment into the yellow to make orange. And that's going to be a little bright, I think. Come over this other yellow with the orange. Put enough water in it that it bleeds. Yellow pigment and a tiny bit of pink. Oh, that one's more orange. Blend it down. Add water if you need to. Let it bleed together. Go from edge to edge. Now we're going to come in with the bright pink. And it is very, very bright. Let it come down further because we're going to become a purple. Go all the way from edge to edge. Now, very bright. Add water. If it's way too bright, then you can blot it with a paper towel or a Kleenex. But I am going to go ahead and leave it a little bit bright. That's going to be very bright. Bring it on down because we want some purple. Now a tiny bit of blue. And a tiny bit of pink. We're going to bring that in there so we get those nice lavender tones. We want the lavender tones in here. And then we want to, whoa, way too dark. I'm going to blot that. I want lavender tones, not dark, dark blue. This one's not going to have as many stripes on it, but it's going to be all right. Then we're going to finish off with some watered down blue. That's very bright. Let me come over here and add more water to it. And finish off with the turquoisey blue over here. Now, after I get these done, there's not a thing I can do with these watercolor cards until they're dry. Of course, I've got some already done off to the side. Some of them turn out a little bit better than others, but those are pretty. So I'm moving them off to the side and letting them dry. Now let me tell you a little bit about my pigment. This is not regular watercolor. Here is one of my watercolors that I really like, but it's not as vibrant as this. These are the mermaid markers. They're made by Jan Davenport. They're a little bit expensive, but when you paint with them, they're super, super vivid and bright. So I like to water them down a little bit. So I just put them in this little palette. If they dry, they're just like watercolors. They can be reconstituted. So I'm going to move this off to the side. This paper is pretty. I can use this for something in scrapbooking, but I'm just going to fold it up and move it off to the side. Here's some that are finished. I kind of like to put the yellow at the top. And it doesn't matter if you get some of the things like this on the side. It doesn't matter at all. Now I'm going to come in with my Sharpie markers and quickly draw something on here. There's 2 or 3 things I like to do. I like my crazy animals. One of the things I do with my crazy animals are make the eyes different sizes. If it's a crazy animal, I make a large nose. This is going to be a dog-like creature. Some of mine are monsters. I haven't drawn the monsters in a while. This is the fine Sharpie. I also really like the ultra fine Sharpie. Sometimes those are not quite thick enough, and so I go over them a couple of times. But the fine Sharpie is very, very thick, in my opinion. And they can be cross-eyed. I like making my eyes a little bit different sizes just to be kind of kooky. And let's come in here with the little mouth. Now these need to be completely dry before you can do this. So you've just got to be patient. That's why I usually make them in batches. I like this pupil to be large, but I leave a white spot in it. That way when I come in with my white, it's easier to color over it. My little animal faces are just kooky. There's no right or wrong way to do it. I make them pretty quickly. I love these little triangle ears that are puppy floppy ears. And I start with the face first, not the face shape. And then I come down here and decide how it's going to go. I'm getting the little cheeks in there. And then I usually color this in black. Sometimes I stick out their little tongues. I usually put some kind of shadow in here, not necessarily with the Sharpie. Sometimes it's just shadow with the watercolor. Let's give him a skinny little neck and a dog collar. There we go. You can kind of color in here if you want to make it darker. Sometimes I have his little paw sticking up. I don't have room for it this time. Now, it's hard to see the eye right here. So what I usually do is either use my acrylic paint and a small brush and paint it in, or I use a white Posca pen, or this is the Uniball white, and color this in. The Uniball works really well. It also is very good to put the highlights in the eyeball. Now, because this is done with the watercolor markers, I like to change it just a little bit. I colored over those black lines. There's nothing I can do about it right now, but as soon as this Uniball dries, I can go in and go over that and make it black. I like to do little white because look how it shows up on that purple area. A little bit of white in there, a little bit of highlights here and there. There we go. He's almost finished. I will come back to him in a minute. I'm going to add a little bit more color using these to fill it out in just a minute. Well, let me go ahead and just do it right now while I'm here. I'm going to use this little tiny brush. I'm going to get a little bit of this blue. I realize that most animals have brown eyes, and I can make a really pretty good brown with these primary colors that I'm using. But what's the fun of that? I either make them purple or blue usually. I think I want to use a little bit of this purple. And I need to wash the brush. I stuck it in the blue first, and then I stuck it in the pink. Yeah, that's a good purple. I want to use a little bit of that purple inside this ear up here to shadow it in. I want to get it very light colored and do a little shadow around his eyes here. Do you see that it's very pastel? I just put a little bit of water in there to come around in here. There we go. Now, I can't go back over that with these pens until it's completely dry. So when you're doing this, work in stages. You can come back and add it. If you put in a color you don't like in here, it's too bright, dab it with a tissue. Wet it, and you can remove some of those. I think he needs a stronger line on the outside, so I'm just coming in here with this larger Sharpie and outlining around the edge. Now, what do I do with these? These are artist trading cards. I trade them with other artists, mostly people I've met online, or I write my information on the back and give them out as business cards. And you saw that that took me almost no time to do. I need the body to be larger over here. Also, I can take them and make a dark line around them. Remember, never use Sharpie without at least one sheet of paper under them. I've got 2 or 3 sheets of paper right here under this. And that way it keeps from writing on my white table. But if you were to get little dots of the marker on there, a Mr. Clean Magic Eraser will remove them if you put enough elbow grease. Okay, I think that's finished. Now, I'm not worried about having the color on the back. I just write my name, my business page, and if I'm giving it out as a business card, I put my phone number so that they can contact me. I teach paint parties, and oh, he turned out cute. Now, another thing I like to do is my Picasso women. So I will show you how I do that very quickly. I like to make this a very bold line. And usually I switch to the smaller. In my hand, I have a handful of pens in my hand. I usually go to the smaller line in here. Don't ask me why. It's just what I like to do. And then I make a very large eye. My eye usually tilts upwards. And I nearly always make it look off this direction. Why? I don't know. That's just the way I like to do it. It is based off of Picasso, but it is not a copy of Picasso. I think you understand that. And it's hard for me to keep a dialogue going while I'm drawing. I know the ones of you that do lives understand that. And I don't want to do this too much longer. But I showed you my crazy animal. And I also do cats, fox, different animals. This marker is acting like it may be running out, so I may have to switch. Okay, I always make my mouth the full frontal mouth, even though I have the side view of the face. And I usually do something on the cheek. A star, a heart, a spiral. Let's do a heart because I really like hearts and because this is really pink right here. And it doesn't have to be the whole thing. It can go off the edge. And I will probably reinforce this line right here to make it thicker. Okay. And the hair. I will put a little bit of white in this hair because the white highlights really go. And I think instead of using the lines on this, I'm going to do the little spiral, kind of the Zentangling lines. The top lip is usually a little darker than the other. And there's my little eye. It's going to make a huge difference when I come in here with the white and color this in. It's very easy to do it with this Uniball. And it's very easy to do it with the white acrylic. When I'm doing something small like this with my white acrylic, I hardly ever put the paint out I usually just get the lid of the paint and do it, but be very careful because I have been known to spill things. And I've lost my little brush. There we go. I've been known to spill the bottle, so be very careful. Now I'm going to come in with this, and I'm about to get off of here because I'm not going to come very long. I want a darker purple. I'm going to get the pink first and put it in the blue. And I'm going, that's not enough blue, dot it in there. And I am going to paint this background right here, the darker purple. It gives us a contrast between the nose and the hair. And coming down in here. I think what I want to do when this completely dries is go over this in here and put a white line with the Uniball pen. I have wasted too many pens going in on wet paper. That is a triple no-no because you will ruin your pens. Let it dry. If you have to use the hair dryer, fine, but make sure that it's completely dry before you touch it to the paper. Now, I think I want to lighten this just slightly and do the eye in a light purple. Maybe a tiny bit more pink in there to make it a more red-violet. Oh, that's a good color. I like that a lot. Then you have a decision to make whether you're going to color in the eyelid, and I've decided not to. I'm going to put a little shadow in here with a little bit of water. And there we go. I am going to come back to this when it is dry and put that white line in there, and it's going to make a big difference. But right now, I have to be careful with it. I'm going to go only on the places where it's dry. And I'm going to come in here and make a white line in here on the hair. Now, notice it doesn't show up much over on the yellow, but it shows up quite a bit where it's dark, where it's a darker color in here. Alrighty, that's how I make my ATCs. And see, this has paint on the background. I don't care. This is how I make my ATCs with my rainbow paper. And I've got several all made up to begin with. Thank you for coming along. And your students can make these too. It's easy for adults. It's easy for the kids. I think this needs the black border or some stitching that you do. Here's what I mean by stitching. I sometimes use this type of mark along the edge that I call stitching. Sometimes I use the dot and the dash, the dash, the dot, the dash, the dot to do the edges. Thank you very much.